Hi, my name is Mitch Bone, and I am the president of the MSUB Democrats and also a member of the Yellowstone County Central Committee. And tonight I am here with U.S. Senate candidate John Mues. How are you doing tonight, John?
Really good, really good. How about yourself, Mitch?
Doing really well. How are you guys holding up with this shut-in that we've had for the last few weeks?
Just keeping our head low. We've got a couple high-risk people in the family, so just making sure that they're protected, and it's a little bit hit or miss. There have been people who flaunt every um, guideline, and other people who do everything perfectly, and then it just ends up impacting almost like the wrong folks. So
Right.
there is a little bit of a hit or miss nature to this virus, but just like everyone, we're doing our best. At the same time, trying to reach out to different folks, letting them know again what we're about as a candidate, and also seeing if we can help any folks around the state and elsewhere. Yep.
Yeah, that's why I started to do these because I saw that we were going to be shut in for a while. And I'm like, well, people can't campaign. So I wanted to help the different candidates and make sure that they got their word out, not only to Yellowstone County, but hopefully other parts of the state too.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Mitch, especially for candidates without 100% name recognition and tens of millions of dollars in the bank to get that out. So that's really helpful.
Right. So I just wanted to start this off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the Senate seat.
Sure. So my name is John Mues. I'm running for the United States Senate as a Democrat, been a lifelong Democrat. I'm running simply because the issues that we face are existential in nature. We're no longer talking about slight improvements from one party to the next. What we're really talking about is one party that is accelerating our decline as a nation, and another party that is, in my opinion, split between those who will sort of temper that decline, and those who could actually turn things around. So, I definitely regard myself as a candidate who is interested in turning around our country, setting ourselves up for true success throughout the new 21st century. And so that's why I'm running. And it has, just like a lot of folks, I certainly hope my young son, my family, are taken care of in terms of policies that are going to allow them to prosper, that are allow them to be safe, allow them to be healthy. So all of these things are super important, and the stakes couldn't be bigger. And it just so happens that my background and my biography is one that probably connects with all Montanans from every single corner of the state, as well, if not better than any other candidate in recent memory. So I'm trying to leverage that, and have been since the 11th of July, 2019, when I announced, to really make sure that we have someone who can beat Senator Daines, but not only that, but who's going to be a Democrat who can actually reverse our decline as a country and set ourselves up for success in the new century.
That's great. So Montana in presidential runs tend to vote for the Republican, but when it comes to our state and federal offices, we are kind of a toss-up state because we do elect Democrats. So how do you think you can balance or find a balance between both parties so that Republicans who want to vote for a Democrat would vote for you?
No, that's a great question. And, and I appreciate that you're calling our state a toss-up state. And, Governor Bullock, I certainly have appreciated his terms as governor. I thought he's done a very competent job, but I really didn't appreciate his characterization of our state as a red state. And frankly, for that matter, other politicians, for one reason or another, characterize our state as a red state. It's not. It's a toss-up state. It's a purple state, perhaps right of purple. But you do need to connect in a general election to more than just Democrats, or you're going to lose. And there's a few different ways of doing that. So one is to be very, very principled, but have no background that connects with people on a personal level as a Democrat. And as we've seen, those candidates never do very well. There's another group that may not connect or may connect in only sort of a lukewarm way with all folks in the state, but that really try to compromise their policy positions in order to appeal to all sorts of folks. For instance, Governor Bullock is all in on the Keystone XL pipeline. Is reticent to really push healthcare as a human right and look at things that are more than just improvisations of the Affordable Care Act, so on and so forth. So, from that standpoint, that is one tact. The other tact is to put a candidate who, again, is really interested in turning our country around, who's interested in policies that are actually going to make a substantive difference in terms of climate change, in terms of our healthcare crisis, in terms of many national security crises, in terms of unprecedented economic inequality that affects everybody and also is very detrimental to our democracy. Somebody who can move forward with the types of policies we need to actually do that, but because of biography, because of personal connection and background, can connect with all sorts of folks through the state. I would contend that I could take a more progressive position on our transition to a clean energy economy and yet get more votes from Eastern Montana, Northwest Montana, and the High Line than Democrats who say, sure, let's throw in the Keystone XL pipeline. Yeah, climate change is important, but it's not that important. So I do think that there are different tacks to winning a general election. And in this case, it's not every year that we have somebody who can walk into Knoxon or walk into Baker, Montana, or walk into Malta, Montana, and feel absolutely comfortable talking to the hardest core right-wing folks. But yet, because of that background and biography, is able to stick to and articulate policy positions that tend to be a little bit more progressive and that can turn this country around.
I definitely think that's what we need. We need that across the board in every state. We need people that aren't completely far left, completely far right. We need, like you're saying, people that can cross borders and talk to both, but also push their whatever Democrat, Republican agenda.
Sure. But I wanted to differentiate what I would say is, say, Governor Bullock style, which is, to really compromise on policy. My style would be less compromising on policy, more articulating what the right policies are. But look, my background is fourth generation Montanan, grew up hard scrabble roots, broken family, on food stamps, living in places like Deer Lodge and Wolf Point and the wrong neighborhoods of Helena. And I'm able to look people in the eye and say, look, I get you, but this is actually what is in the country's and your personal and your family's best interests. And I think that's an approach that would be very successful.
Definitely. So you mentioned that you are from, or you've lived in Deer Lodge and Wolf Point. So how would you help reservations if you are elected to the U.S. Senate?
Well, Deer Lodge is off reservation. It does have quite a few Native Americans in the town, though. And I've also, I was a high school math and English teacher on the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation as well. So grew up in part on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, grew up or lived and worked on the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. And but so as far as what we need to do in Indian country, that's your question, basically. Yeah. I think education is the number one most important thing in Indian country. And, my experiences taught me or I should say confirmed, that there is incredible, limitless talent and potential on each of our tribal nations in Montana and certainly elsewhere. And what these folks need are the proper investments in education, but also the importance of empowering teachers to really do what's necessary to uphold high standards and persist in pushing forward educational excellence. I really view the school system in our tribal nations. I mean, there's a little bit of a love-hate relationship. A lot of folks truly understand that education is the way forward, but they also have a very difficult history with our educational system through boarding schooling and a lot of injustice. So there's always that to deal with, but that shouldn't be an excuse not to truly invest, recruit, and reward the absolute best teachers that you can find, minimize turnover. So from the school, many good things emanate. A number of families may be struggling, there may be dysfunction of different sorts, but when they see their kids doing well and being challenged and really responding to that experience, it inspires them to do amazing things as well. So from the school, I always view many good things expanding out. Now, there are other things, and having been on every single reservation in Montana, and it's fantastic that the Little Shell now are formally
Yes.
designated, which is a huge win for Montana and the country. There's also a real big need for security. So whether you're talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, whether you're talking about these sort of interfaces between BIA, whether you're talking about local police, whether you're talking about off-reservation police, whether you're talking about federal FBI, all of these things need to be worked. And I think there has been some very good work along those lines, but we have to make sure we keep it on our radar. So two major things. One is education, and also not just our conventional pre-K through 12 education, but truly quality and respected vocational and trade schooling, which is super important. Kids may not be super interested in Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, but they may be able to build or lay down a foundation for a house, or do things that weld in a way that the kids getting A+ in pre-calc cannot do. And those are truly quality livable wage jobs that we really need to consider integral to that educational offering. So education is critical, and then security, making sure that everybody on our tribal nations and those who are tribal members who are living off reservation are taken care of. And so those two things are the main things I would focus on.
Great. So then also, what are some bills that you would sponsor in the Senate that would help just everyday Montanans?
Well, first of all, infrastructure is critical. Right now, through infrastructure, you can parse that into all sorts of bills and sub-bills. But what we really need as a country is to rebuild. Our infrastructure, whether you're talking about traditional infrastructure from water lines and gas lines and sewage lines and this and that, to the infrastructure that we're going to need for the future, whether it be smart grids for a clean energy economy, whether it be charging stations, whether it be hydrogen filling stations that can also support zero emission transportation, when we're also building out the kinds of major distribution lines that can take Montana generated power from clean sources, whether it be wind or even solar or geothermal or hydro, and move that to markets where that could be a very significant revenue generating export of our state. Infrastructure is huge. Part of that is also making sure that broadband is ubiquitous to every single corner of our state. And, there's always been some resistance to that. But if you don't have quality internet access, just like we do right now, you are at a massive disadvantage personally, but also from a business competitiveness standpoint. And, that is just fundamental, but it all falls into infrastructure. We need to make sure that infrastructure is at the top of the agenda when we're talking about Montana. And, again, back to the renewable clean energy piece, that is going to be a huge winner, not just for the planet, not just for the country, but for Montana, because we have so many renewable energy resources that we can use both internally and also as an export good. So a lot of promise there. And I want to, when I talk about renewable energy, let's say someone from Colstrip's watching this, there's an incredible amount of renewable energy potential in Colstrip, and not just with respect to the distribution lines that could take, say, a major wind farm's power generation and move it to the West Coast, but also other ways of creating both transportation and power-based clean energy. So lots of promise, but we need to have somebody who can think a little bit outside the box, who has firsthand experience doing this, and get it done.
That's exactly right. So your campaign has had something that I don't know if I've ever seen before. You and your wife had a baby while you were on the campaign. How is he doing?
He is our little bundle of joy. He's our miracle kid. And as you may know, our child was born quite prematurely. My wife had been dreaming about a natural birth, and so we were seeing what we understood to be the only certified natural birth center in the state of Montana. Things were going great, and then all of a sudden things weren't going great, and we actually had to go to out of state. My wife was in the hospital for nearly 3 weeks, and our son has been in the hospital in a neonatal intensive care unit for over 5 months. So not only was he born prematurely, but he ended up having a life-threatening illness. Most people had written him off, but he made a 180-degree turnaround. So he's got all of the strong, good genes of his mother, and there may be some long-term impacts, but he's going to survive. He is just an incredible kid, and he inspires us constantly. So yeah, thanks for asking that.
Of course, that's great, and I think he has great parents to help raise him, so that's great too.
Especially his mother.
Well, so for anybody that wants to get involved in your campaign, how can they do that, John?
Well, the website is the same as it's been since July 11th, 2019, when I decided to jump into this race and take on the worst United States senator in our lifetime, who is Steve Daines. And that's Mues4Montana.com, MUES4Montana.com. But to be honest with you, since Governor Bullock has jumped in the race, and because of this coronavirus pandemic, we have not been fundraising. We actually would recommend that people put their money towards different nonprofits and initiatives helping our first responders, our frontline nurses, doctors, and medical professionals, because that is the priority right now, not a U.S. Senate race. That said, I do believe that anybody who ends up winning this primary is going to beat Senator Daines. His liabilities are manifold. His biography matches up particularly poorly with mine, And Governor Bullock, on the other hand, has 100% name recognition and a lot of money in the kitty. So either way, Senator Daines is going to be in a difficult situation. We're going to end up beating him, and it's not just a nice to have; it's essential that we do.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time, John, and have a great rest of your night.
Hey, all the best, Mitch. Always good to see you.
Yes, you too.
All right, take care.
You too.